Good evening, Coral Ridge family, Westminster Academy family, and all those that are tuning in for this special midweek event hosted by Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church. It's a special event with Bob and Rosemary Barnes. We are talking a lot in our nation about good health and how to be a healthy nation. Well, one of the areas we need to be talking about is marriage. We need healthy marriages. It's so important in this time and in this current time of crisis that we're giving our people resources and tools for how to have a healthy marriage. And I can't think of a better couple than Bob and Rosemary Barnes. They lead Sheridan House Family Ministries for so many decades now, right here in South Florida. Sheridan House ministers to the needs of children and families here in South Florida, and we are so blessed by their partnership, by their life, and by their testimony, and for joining us here tonight and bringing us some important tools and resources for those married couples in our community. But I'm going to start off with a word of prayer, and then I'm going to turn it over to them. Our Father and our God, Lord, I thank you for this evening. This is an important topic because, Lord, we have marriages that need help. We have marriages that are looking for direction, looking for real answers. And I thank you for Bob and Rosemary. I thank you for the gift of Sheridan House Family Ministries, for how they have ministered to my family and to so many marriages and couples and families here in the South Florida area and beyond. And so, Lord, I thank you for their testimony. I thank you for the tools and the resources that they will give us. Lord, I thank you for instituting marriage from the very beginning. You said this would be the sacred union in which all other relationships, in which our communities, in which our society flourishes. Lord, if our marriages don't flourish, our society can't flourish. So, Lord, I pray that as couples are tuning in, I pray that they would realize that they are not beyond hope, that they are not beyond saving their marriage, that they are not beyond putting the necessary tools in place even tonight in order for their marriages to grow, in order for their marriages to flourish. And so, Lord, I pray that you would give us peace and you give us wisdom in these trying times as we talk about marriage and quarantine. And it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Please welcome Bob and Rosemary Barnes.
And thank you, Pastor Rob. After that prayer, I'm not sure you really need us here, but thank you for that. We are in different times. This is different for us, and if it's different for us and we don't have any children at home, I can't imagine how different it is for others who have children at home. And what means it's different for marriages today. I mean, but here's the deal. For thousands of years, people educated their children in their home. For thousands of years, they were there. They didn't get in cars and drive all over the place. They didn't have the cyber world. So it's kind of us, but for thousands of years, this was a reality. And I remember early on thinking for a little bit, you know, we're not stuck at home. We're very blessed to have a home. And having the privilege of working at Sheridan House with single moms who don't, and their struggles right now. But we're going to talk about some things. But before we do that, we need to start talking about our differences in the same home. Your office is the home. You do all your work at home. My office is at Sheridan House, and now my office is in the home. And there's some choices we have to make. I mean, did this catch God off guard or what?
And I think that's an important place to start, that we know that God knows about this. And in fact, a very favorite verse of many of us, Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good for those who loved him and are called according to his purpose. So if we know that God knows about this, and we know that, you know, as far as the good things are concerned, we're not all that frustrated or trying to figure out if God knows about it. It's when the difficult things come into our way that we're wondering, does he really know about that? So if he knows about this and he's going to work good things out from this, then we need to be thinking about what exactly are those good things that we need to be thinking through. Sarah Heidick, dear friend, said this: we must not just get through this, but grow through this. And I just think that is such an amazingly good statement, that we have got to not only know that God knows, and if God knows, then I need to learn and grow through this situation, and our relationship together as a married couple needs to grow.
We must not just get through it. but grow through it. This is Romans 8:28, what you just did. You don't have to explain to me that the good things work together for good. The things that I have to grasp onto God for is the difficult things, is the virus things. And how's this going to work together for good in my world, in my marriage here? And so, yeah, we must not just get through this, but grow through this. It's interesting because the marriage, as Pastor Rob said in a prayer in Genesis 2:18, the Lord said, it's not good for man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him. And that helper in Hebrew can be rescuer, can be the word rescuer. And it's almost like God made Adam, and Adam was Adam, and he's working the garden, and probably doesn't have a life. And all of a sudden, God decides to give him Eve. And I have to believe Adam had no idea Eve would look like Eve looks. And as he gives him Eve, I want to see the DVD in heaven when Adam wakes up and sees Eve standing there and goes, wow. And it was probably to coax him out of the garden. It's not good for man to be alone. I will give him a helper suitable for him. And then as we start looking at the marriage tonight, just down from that, he gives the marriage paradigm. And there are 4 legs on this marriage paradigm, but one is very critical. It begins, this is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife. And here it is. They will become one flesh. Now, that's not a sexual reference. It would say, and they became. They will become. It's a process reference. And so being home, being blessed to be in the same house, there's a picture here of becoming one flesh, like the farmer and his wife and 12 kids in this teeny little house all the time. Yeah, become, and they will become one flesh.
The interesting thing about that verse is that we are so incredibly different as male and female. And thinking about God putting us together as one flesh. I mean, you think about all the differences. First of all, just gender. Oh my goodness, the differences between the male and the female.
This isn't where you make negative statements.
No, well, anyway. But we're so male and female. Our background differences. We grew up in different families, and so the things that were really emphasized and were important to us in the growing up process, perhaps were not in the other person's family as well. Yeah. And then not only that, but our personalities, our temperaments. You know, as we go into this difficult time, as we're under the same roof 24/7, you know, the things that are important to me, perhaps as a woman, and to my temperament and to my background, may be very different from yours. And so it's just very interesting to me that God took such different beings, woman and male and female, man and woman, and our backgrounds and all the things that make up who we are, and put us together. But here's the thing, God, in his incredible wisdom, he knew that that was the best thing. He knew that my weaknesses would be your strengths would be my weaknesses, and together as we blend and find out what that one flesh means, then our family benefits, our marriage benefits. I glean from your strengths, you glean from my strengths, and then not only in our marriage, but even in the lives of our children, that God's coming together, putting us together as one flesh, working together to become one flesh, was all part of God's plan to make us a strong family unit.
So you're starting to give a picture here, this forcing us to be in the house together could and should become a major blessing as we, what were those eyes right there? Could and should be a major blessing as we figure it out. You know, we tend to marry our opposite, you said that, and we are in the home together for this season. That fact becomes blaringly obvious because on-time people marry late people, talkers marry non-talkers, spenders marry savers, morning people marry a person who says, please, Bob, don't talk before 7 o'clock.
At least 3 cups of coffee first.
You can't even talk. It's pathetic. And I'll never forget the early years of marriage when you wanted to have conversations in bed at night. And I would look over at me and say, you're not falling asleep, are you? And it's 10 o'clock at night. And it came out of my mouth before I could stop it. Rosemary, going to bed to me means one of 2 things, neither of which is talking. Yes, you rolled over and never talked to me again for about 2 days. Yes. We need to know we're different. We need to embrace the differences. And unfortunately, my temperament wants to help your temperament be my, you rolled your eyes again, be my temperament. And I know it's wrong. It's like, did God permit me to be home right now to help you learn how to fill the dishwasher properly? Because there's an order to the way everything goes. And it baffles me that you don't care about that order. And God is just saying, what is wrong with you, Bob? So this should be a good time, right?
Yes, but I think sometimes we feel, and I think there are many couples out there that feel that we're experiencing sort of an invasion of our territory, perhaps. Maybe if it's a mom of small children or school-age children, or maybe school-age, we'll use that as an example, school-age children. I got the children off to school and I'm home today, and so I'm going to get this, this, and this done, and then all of a sudden we're invaded. Or perhaps the husband or wife or both are doing virtual jobs from home, working on the computer. And so suddenly we feel like we're not having our time to ourselves, that we're having to share or work through and figure out how to deal with space invasion in our territories.
No, well, in our world, I get up 5-ish. 5:30, I have devotions till 6:15-ish. Then you get up at 6:15-ish and you start your devotions, and I'm just staring at you waiting to be done so we can actually talk, and then you went and bought me a book, so I start reading books instead. But yeah, I mean, it's so routine and we don't realize it, and you're an intellect, you're not a routine person, where I'm not an intellect. And for you to say different, I don't know if you remember this, we were so different when you led me to Christ in college. When we started dating, there was a meeting in your dorm of some of the other women in your dorm saying, "What are you doing with Bob Barnes?" I mean, that's how different we were. So yeah, absolutely. We're experiencing a routine invasion. And for me, I've never spent so much time in your office. And your routines, and working on writing your Bible studies, and wanting to go, let's go do this, and you walk every day for 2 miles at the same time, and it's like, yike, so yeah, if we don't talk through these things, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, and this is minimal right here, our routines. We're supposed to be mature and be able to handle it and be able to do it and become, but there are little eyes watching us. And during this time, there are little eyes learning, is marriage a good thing or a bad thing? I'm convinced the fact that the marriage rate has gone down is because so many kids grew up in homes watching, whoa, I don't want that. I don't want that. And so we're role modeling marriage and how we deal with our children during this time.
And that's probably one of the bigger challenges, obviously, especially families that still have children at home, of how do we deal with the children? You know, this is not just they go off to school and come back for a few hours and we have dinner together and get them ready for bed or homework or whatever. We have children, whatever the ages are, underfoot 24/7, number one. And so keeping them entertained, keeping them happy, keeping them under control, discipline-wise, keeping them, if they're doing virtual school, which most of them are today, you know, all of those things we need to factor into that. That makes it even more of a challenge as far as the marriage is concerned, because we do have children underfoot.
And this is such a great time for dads to be weighing in. No one's going to do virtual school perfectly, and academics are not the top thing at all. And I know we tend to think they're the top things, and then comes soccer. The top thing is Jesus, the next with my children and my family, but the next thing is family. And so to keep them entertained, this is a time for fun. They need to be having fun, and the best fun on planet Earth is fun at dad's expense. This is a time playing games where dad loses. And there's so many things on Facebook of dads and their teenage daughters doing a dance and a song, and those dads haven't got a hope of dancing well, and the daughters are doing everything they can not to burst out laughing. Those little girls 10 years from now, when you talk about this, oh, remember that's when Dad danced with me. And talking with Tori the other day about the great Monopoly games we would play during the hurricanes, and her remembering me having a temper tantrum, and faking a temper tantrum. So we need to be entertained. We need to know they're underfoot, but at the same time, this is a great time for training. What are their chores? And no child's going to come and say, can I have a chore? So in order to do this training thing, mom and dads need to get together and talk through this. We need to talk through, okay, what chore, age-appropriate chore do we want to give each child? What's right and what's wrong? And usually disciplinarians marry relationship people. I'm the disciplinarian and you're the relationship person. And you used to have to lighten me up a little bit about some expectations of all these things. But we're all, you know, the farmer's kids got up and got the eggs. They didn't whine. They got the eggs, and they knew they were a valuable part of the family. This is the time to be doing things in such a way and training them in all the things we'd like to train them and take advantage of it. And I just want to stop for a second and say this can be done. We did an family isolation thing for 7 weeks years ago. Tori was 12, Tori was 15, Roby was 12. And the board of directors at Chernows gave me my first sabbatical. And for 7 weeks, we got in our Chevy Astro van and drove 12,500 miles. And it was a little under 12,500, all around North America and up into Canada in this Chevy Astro van. Now, for privacy, we got a little motel room, separate rooms every night. But still, and it was a great time. And I remember coming back and one of my board members, Lorraine Morris, asking me, how was your trip? Before we do the board meeting, tell us how the trip was. And one of the men spoke up and said, I cannot believe you were with your children in your Astro van. It would have been a nightmare for me. That's because no training. No training here.
Then the other area, and we've kind of mentioned it already, is school, that we've got that on the table as well. And, along with the other responsibilities we have around the house, for the woman, meal preparation and laundry and all those kinds of things. But on top of that, we have the school. And how does that look? And how do we do that? And can we share that responsibility? And you may have work to do for the office at the computer. Maybe I have work to do for my work on the computer. And yet we have this issue of school. And how are we going to handle that? And how am I going to suddenly become a school teacher under my roof and all that? So we have that issue with the children as well, the schooling.
I can do all things through Christ who gives me the strength I need. He would never give me a job I can't do. Am I going to do it perfectly? That's not the deal. That's not the deal. I want my children, again, to walk away. I want them to walk away from this time and look back on it. And it was great. We did silly things. But part of this thing we haven't really walked into yet is discipline. We need to be on the same page for discipline. When we're going to bed, when they're getting up. And here's the reason, even though they don't have school tomorrow, they need to be put to bed at a specific time. To not get out of the routine. They need to get up kind of at a specific time, but they need to be put to bed at a specific time so you and I have time. So we can, let's just sit and be and talk, and how did we do today? And I know this is hard for you because you're a pleaser, but what did you think you would like me to have done differently? That took you decades to be able to say that to me. Yes, but the discipline of the children, the discipline, that means that's a no. You do that, you're choosing a consequence. No. You chose walking across the street with Judah when he was 4, and I made him hold my hand, and he pulled his hand out of my hand, and I squeezed his hand tighter, and he kept on. I squeezed it tighter, and Judah said, "Pippi, you're hurting my hand," and I said, "No, Judah, you're hurting your hand. Choose not to hurt your hand. Don't pull it out. Choose not to have to sweep out the garage. Choose not to have to vacuum the inside of the car. Whatever the consequences are, choose not to have to go to bed." But in the marriage in this time, because you have done the discipline, let's say, pretty much all your own. It's friends of mine whose husbands travel during the week to work, and they come home, and the lady will say, we pretty much have a good system. Then he comes home and he takes over the system. And so it requires so much discussion that we're going to talk about in a little bit.
So not only are we talking about an invasion of our territory, an invasion of our personal time, an invasion of what is expected of me as a husband and wife, and what's expected of me as a parent in this situation. To add to that, we are going through some deep emotions right now. There's a feeling of fear. How are we going to do financially while our economy is put on hold during this period? And how long is it going to be put on hold? And goodness sake, are we going to get the disease? Our children, our loved ones, our friends, our families? And so there's a tremendous amount of fear out there. So added to the other difficulties that we're trying to deal with or sort through and get a handle on, we have that issue of our fears. And so the stress on our lives, will sometimes cause us to say things, do things that perhaps we would never have dreamed of saying or doing in a normal circumstance. And so I think it can put a tremendous stress and strain on the relationship because not only of the challenges we've talked about, but then on top of that, the emotions that we're dealing with.
Yeah, and for me, the segments I've gone into a little bit of fear, walking out of a meeting at Sheridan House, realizing we're going to have to feed so many single moms. Right now we have over 3,000 single moms we work with at Sheridan House and their children. We're going to have to feed them, and then get a call from Cisco truck saying, can we deliver a semi-tractor trailer full of food? And somebody called me and said, who do you know at Cisco? I don't know anybody at Cisco. Don't even know how they heard about us at Cisco. But and it's God saying, Bob, are you watching? Are you watching here? This is a time for faith, not for fear. Faith, not for fear.
And if he's going to do that with something like a miracle like a Cisco truck, goodness sake, is he not going to do a miracle for his children?
Oh, yes. And I guess the biggest miracle that was ridiculous was when we did back to school backpacks for our single moms. And remember that mom who couldn't come that Saturday. And I don't know why this is so huge in my life. She couldn't come that Saturday when we handed out hundreds of backpacks. And so she called on a Monday. I'm sorry, I had my gallbladder removed. I couldn't come. Do you have any more backpacks? Yes, we do. And she said, I hate to ask this, but do you have anything in purple? And we said, yes. And then she went the next step and she said, do you have anything with a unicorn on it? And we said, no, I'm sorry, they're all blank, we don't have them. And so she said, okay, I'll be there after 5. At 3 in the afternoon, a lady pulled up with 2 backpacks that we were out of town, I didn't get them here, do you still need them? One was a purple backpack, remember, with a unicorn on it. The whole lobby burst into tears. Now, can I just say, and this is ridiculous, but that backpack was ridiculous. And if he cares about a little girl, a little 5-year-old in a unicorn backpack, how much more? So Bob, I expect you to step up in faith here, period. Yeah, we aren't quarantined, we're blessed to have this time. And sometimes we have to figure out how to receive the blessing. It's interesting because you started making me reading books in the morning rather than bugging you during devotion. So I read a biography of Martin Luther's wife. He called her Katie. It was Catherine von Bora. And Catherine von Bora was a nun who walked away during the Reformation. And Martin Luther was too. He was 44. She was 25. And she sort of pursued him, according to the biographer. And he has a quote. I don't think he ever intended to get married. And then he got married. And then a plague hit. And they were kind of shut down. I can't believe I started reading this time. And he said, he has a quote in there. He called marriage a school for character.
Wow.
A school for character. In other words, being married is a school for character building. Because here's why. My culture teaches me to be an individual. My culture teaches me it's all about me. My culture teaches me to get married to get my needs met. You know, and how many times had we heard people say, well, he's just not meeting my needs. And I know you didn't take vows till needs do you part. Marriage is your greatest form of worship. And for him to say a school of character. So if that's it, then how do we start building character?
And I think the first thing that we need to do is to really begin to be communicating with each other. And, you know, some of these difficulties, some of the stress, some of the feelings that we're having, some of the difficulties and the challenges that we've already talked about, it's going to be hard unless we are able to sit down and talk to one another. We need to have staff meetings. And perhaps with us, it was always, you know, when the children went to bed at night, you know, that was a perfect time. Some we have small children. Some couples out there listening have small children. Some have school-age children. Some are empty nesters. Some are retired couples. But whatever our family situation is, we need to find time where we can sit down and talk about it and say, okay, we have resolved that we're going to help each other in this way. How did we do today? How did I do today? How did I do? Did I seem irritated? Did I seem stressed over the circumstances that we're dealing with?
When I handled my daughter, how could I have handled her differently?
Yeah.
And a question to you, because she seemed surprised. I'm going to ask you a question.
I'm not done talking, but that's okay. No.
Bullied the whole thing.
Just kidding.
How did you get me to do that? I was a non-communicator. How do you remember getting me to start talking?
Well, I think that's a very good question. I have to think for 10 minutes before I'll answer at the very end. How about that? No, I'm just kidding. But I think sometimes we have to throw out a question and then just be quiet and not try and fill in right away, because there's, a time of no conversation, and we tend to kind of jump in sometimes and provide it. And I think also making it be a great setting, you know, maybe sitting out on the porch or, you know, in a favorite spot in the living room, and those kinds of things, making it a pleasant circumstance for the non-talker.
You bought Norman Wright's book, Communication in Your Marriage. You asked me, can we just read a chapter every night and answer the questions at the end? And I remember thinking, could we do anything dorkier on planet Earth? Because you asked, we did it on Thursday nights. We read a chapter, and Norm said the things to me that I needed to hear from him about us. And then we'd answer the questions at the end, and I would ask you, Rosemary, do I do that? And I learned a little code from you. When you would say, no, not really, and when you would say, no, not really, I knew you meant, yes, absolutely, but I don't want you to get defensive or argue about it. And so I could push it a little bit and go after it a little bit. But you taught me how to talk, because talkers marry non-talkers.
Right. The other thing that I think is so incredible is that we lighten up with each other, that we find things to laugh about. Maybe during those staff meetings at the end of the day, saying, could you believe
marriage
staff meetings at the end of the day, yes, that could you believe that incident, could you believe what I said, or whatever, and just finding things to laugh about, to lighten up with each other. We don't have to act like everything is just a critical situation. Let's lighten up and add humor to our times together. And then finding fun activities, I think, also helps in the communication process. I've heard many couples talking about pulling out games and doing fun things with each other. I have been begging you this week to teach me how to play chess. You grew up playing chess, and I want to learn how. I've never played chess.
Now you do it publicly.
Yes,
that's very
so
low.
we're going to hold
sad.
you really accountable at this point.
People are going to be asking me now.
But finding fun things to do that will lighten us up sometimes as we're talking, or maybe when we're done talking, to say let's do a fun such and such game or whatever. And I think it's a time where we can just develop some fun between us that perhaps we haven't had time to do during a normal routine day.
There's some people that take a little mini vacation with their kids and go to a little place in Fort Myers or go to a little place in the mountains. We get to do it now. Yes, we have to do school. Yes, we have other things to do. I mean, it's back to, I shouldn't feel bad about being confined in a house. I should be grateful I have a house to be there with. But there's another thing, and this is an ongoing wake up for me. We need to respect each other's routines. We need, rather than saying, Rosemary, I don't know that I do breakfast with the kids like that, because a lot of times I was out the door before breakfast, and so we need to respect each other's routines and not be a fix-it. Even though we could say in our minds, I have the right motives, and you know me, I'm a task person, and you and I were hilarious folding sheets together the other day, because you have a way to fold sheets, but there's really a better way to fold these sheets. And you handed me the sheets. I said, it's yours. You can fold the sheet, and it's a lot easier if there's one of us on each end. And mine doesn't work if there's not one of us on each end. And that's kind of the marriage, isn't it? Doesn't work if there's not. We need to respect each other's routines.
Absolutely. And then probably one of the most important things that we need to think about during this time and all the time in our marriages is serving each other. Rather than, I hope that he will come and help with this, or I hope that she'll get this, rather than that, what can I do to help? How can I serve? How can I make this situation a little bit easier for you? How can I help you with that fear? How can we talk about that? How can we work our staff meetings, family staff meetings, husband and wife staff meetings at the end of the day? How can I serve you to make it be a better situation? Or, for example, like perhaps maybe the husband is working from home on his computer, and mom is maybe trying to do virtual school, and saying, look, when I'm done with my computer meeting from work, how about I take the children outside so that you can get your computer work done from work, or jobs around the house, or whatever. Let's work on this together. Let's get a routine down. Let me help you with what you need to do, and to be sensitive with each other, rather than saying, could you just really help me in this area, and having that expectation, but instead for us to serve one another, find out how I can make this challenging time be a positive time of getting to be together in our home.
That was one of the final illustrations or examples Jesus did with the disciples. when he had the upper room, and I'm convinced when he had the upper room, he dismissed the servant. It would have come with a servant. He dismissed the servant to see which one of them was going to wash feet. The buckets or the bowls there, and the pitchers there, and the towels there. And none of them did it because they're arguing over who's going to be greatest in the kingdom of God. And so he washes their feet. And when he says, do this, I've given you an example. Do this. He wasn't talking about that. He was talking about serving in general. Serve each other. So a couple that's not got any children at home, how can he serve her? If you were that wife, how would you say, no children at home, it would really be great if you could do this or if you could help with that, rather than just doing your computer work? Any thoughts on any things he could do?
Well, asking if there are any things that need to be done around the home that that he can help with, or she saying, how can I help with chores or whatever that you feel like you need to get to that may be on your plate from work or whatever situation, but just asking each other, how can I help? How can I serve you? This is a very different scenario. We don't, in our situation, obviously, as you just said, we don't have children at home, but what are the responsibilities that you feel that you have that you need to get done, and how can I serve you? How can I help you in that circumstance? And wife, back to the husband, what can I do in this circumstance?
I think there's another additional component here. Each of us needs to be noticers of the other person's life and routine. Nobody suggested Jesus wash feet. He noticed it wasn't done, and so noticing, let me do the dishes. And with your personality and your temperament, you used to stop me from doing the dishes. And Rosemary, I don't make the food. When you're home alone, there's like a dish and a glass. When I'm home, because I'm a foodie, there's dishes, utensils, pots, glasses. Let me do the dishes. And it took you a while to actually let me serve there and let me do that. So yeah, we need to serve each other. And here's the big one, number next. We need to love. It's such a classic verse, Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Can I repeat that? Husbands, love your wives only this much. No, you don't have to go any further than this. Only as much as Christ loved the church, gave himself up. That's not just giving himself up on the cross. He came down from heaven. How the angels must have wept when he came down from heaven and was brutalized. That's how much he loves his bride. And so, Bob, not about your needs, not about your needs. You need to be a need assessor. That's the form of love, son. You need to love her.
Probably one of the classic scriptures, besides that one that you just read, that talks about love and what that looks like is 1 Corinthians 13. And when we hear 1 Corinthians 13 read, it kind of sounds ethereal, sounds heavenly, or something you would read at a wedding or something like that. But it's amazing how practical 1 Corinthians 13 is. It says, love is patient and kind. So if I'm going to love my spouse, I'm going to be patient and kind. I'm going to not be rude, the verse goes on to say. Or it doesn't demand its own way. It's not irritable. Oh my goodness, boy, do we need that one right now as we're trying to figure out how to love each other in this very challenging time. And it keeps no records of wrong. And so I think some of those strong verses about what love looks like that Ephesians one that you read, and then 1 Corinthians 13, talking and looking into our lives and saying, how am I doing in that area? Am I showing a rudeness, or am I not being patient or kind, or am I being irritable in these areas? And again, maybe during our husband-wife staff meeting at the end of the day, talk through that and say, how am I doing? And be vulnerable with each other and say, help me in the areas that you think I need to work on, and then be willing to receive them and begin to work on them, rather than saying, wow, I wish, he thinks I'm rude. What about the way he was about such and such?
Yes, but you.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
but
exactly.
You.
Don't love to do the yes, but
get rid of that
game.
phrase. Yeah.
But anyway, I think to be to ask each other, and then here's the other thing that just is striking to me: that if God thought that we could not do those things, if God thought that we couldn't be unselfish and be patient and kind to one another. If he didn't think that we could, husbands love your wives as much as Christ loved the church, if he didn't think we could do that, he wouldn't have asked us.
Oh, that's good.
So he is saying, okay, I'm asking you to do some very hard tasks, seemingly, but know that I will give you the strength to do it if you will ask. And so as we're going in this challenging time, if we can go before him and saying, God, this sounds like a really big task in my life to have these love characteristics. I need you. I need your strength to help me do these things that you have suggested would be a healthy way to respond to my husband or wife.
Well, finally, the most difficult form of love, we need to forgive. We need to forgive each other. Little things, big things, past things, we need to forgive. Forgiveness is a choice. Keep no records of wrongs. Keep no records of wrongs.
Right.
We need to forgive, and that's a calling to do. And Jesus said, forgive because I've forgiven you. But then something really strange at the end of the Lord's Prayer. If you don't forgive, you'll be not forgiven. I don't know what that means. That's for a theologian like Rob. I have no idea what that means. But bottom line here is it's almost like, Bob, how could you not forgive? I know what I've forgiven you of. You must forgive her. She must forgive you. We are in a time right now where we have a privilege. Don't let it become an obstacle. We need to do the things we need to do and come out of this saying, this was a great time. I'm going to ask Pastor Rob to come on up now.
Bob and Rosemary, thank you so much.
Thank you,
This was
Pastor.
awesome. Kept listening for hours to just your wealth of information and knowledge. Just a few questions for you that maybe some of the things you hit on, maybe you can expound on them a little bit. The first one is this: there's no safe place or time to argue or work out our differences. Any recommendations?
I need to create them. Obviously, you don't want to do that in front of the children. You don't want to argue in front of the children. And there have been times with her where she would say something to me and I didn't respond well. And Rosemary would say, you know what, let's take this on tomorrow evening. See, and then it would give me time to think about it. Okay, what is wrong with me? There have been times in the past, you haven't done this in a long time, where she would write something down on a piece of paper on the way out, and I'm on the way out the door, fold it, please don't look at it till you're in your car. And I'd open it up and go, oh, I can't believe we're talking about this again. And I know that Jesus is looking at me saying, do you want me to give you a heart attack? Or what's the problem with you, Bob? But I think we have to find that place. There were times with our 12 and 15-year-old where we say to them, you need to go on upstairs. Well, it's not bedtime yet. Mom and I need the downstairs. We just need the downstairs.
And it could be those staff meetings that we talked about where we set that consistently and hopefully every day, and maybe for one couple it'll be in the evening after the children are in bed, or if it's a couple that don't have children anymore, maybe it's first thing in the morning or whatever, and setting that time aside so that it is a safe place for us to discuss some of those
And
issues.
one person may come from a background that's not a safe person. May come from a background of yelling and screaming, and may come from a background who never saw his parents talking. That's usually the male. May come from a background where I don't like criticism from you. And generally, if I don't like criticism from you, that means I know how far over my head I'm married. Yeah. And so she, you know I love you. You know I love you. I just want to talk about this for us, not for me, for us. And you somehow found the doorway for me to go, okay, okay.
That's good. In this current situation, expectations, rules, and responsibilities have went out the window. Should I be concerned to reestablish them, or should I just not worry about it right now?
I think some of it is personality. I think I don't see them as a must. I see them as a privilege. I see them as raising them up to be more responsible. I mean, we taught our children their chores the summer before the next school year, their chores, because we had time. And so we took advantage of the time. And we taught them consequences. If you don't take the garbage out, you clean out the inside of the garbage can. But we did that the summer before first grade. And so you expect me to say this. I think take advantage of the opportunity to have boundaries. Take advantage of, have some realistic expectations. You push your brother again and you go on and sit in your room.
But and even in the marriage relationship, in answer to that question, I think that we just wait and see. I think we try to think through daily. Okay, what is this going to look like today? What is this going to look like in our relationship and when we talk and all those kinds of things? And maybe there's some things that can fall by the wayside for now. And we'll pick them up gradually as hopefully we get back into a normal routine. But I think we need to decide what our priorities are.
And that's a team decision. Sanity in the home. Okay, we'll have our meeting a little bit later. We've got to get some sanity here in this home with the kids.
I need my downtime, and I'm not getting it. Am I being selfish?
I don't think so. I think if there's a husband or whoever, that's got to be a mom. And here's what helped me. She went away. Roby was 4, Tori was 7. She went away for 4 days to speak in the Midwest. I had them all by myself. Somebody was picking her up Sunday night from the Fort Lauderdale airport to bring her back. She's supposed to be there by 6. From 5:45 on, I'm staring out the front window waiting for her to get there because I'm needing medication. And I remember she came in, I let her play with the kids, and we sat down and I said, I am so sorry. I never realized how hard this job is. I am so sorry. I think it's, a wife saying, Bob, can I just talk to you? I just need some time. And when the children were little, I remember saying to you, what would you like me to do? And you said, could you put Roby in the stroller and Tori on her bike and just go out? And I said, what are you going to do? I'm going to get in the bathtub with nobody beating on the door. And so I think for a husband right now to go home and ask his wife, or probably they're sitting together, are you getting enough downtime?
Right. Yeah, I think that's very critical. I don't think that's
a great
selfish.
question.
I mean, I think that it could become selfish if we make a big deal out of it, but I think that's, again, something to talk about and say, I think it's very important for everybody in these circumstances to have a little time to think, to pray, to process, to work through my emotions and
to admit it.
And to admit it. And just to be by ourselves. And some personalities perhaps need more than others and whatever. But I think that's a very realistic question and need in our lives.
And possibly some realistic expectations of what the house needs to look like right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
certain things aren't important.
They're not. I mean, teaching children don't take out another toy till you put that toy away is important. It's a long process, but it's very important. Things have a place. But, the pillows that are on the couch aren't on the couch right now, and realistic expectations. And I know for her, to put the children to bed, and if I straighten the family room a little bit, she's happier in the family room talking. If not, she's looking for things. If I just spend 3 to 4 minutes, I've already been up with the children, and she's now going up to pray with them and say goodnight, and just straighten a little bit up. It helps her sanity in her office.
We have good friends that are separated, 2 kids. They're using this current crisis as an excuse to say it's not worth it, throwing in the towel. What encouragement would you give them during this season?
Well, she said it well. That's another female writing that. She said it well, using it as an excuse. So I think you encourage them, but understand this was probably for them a perverse opportunity. I'd be praying for them. I'd tell them I'm praying for them. I'd say, could we just help you guys one last shot? Find a counselor somewhere in your community to talk to. And before you make any decisions, that 10 years from now, I can't tell you how many men, especially I have my age men, the greatest mistake I ever did 20, 30 years ago was get a divorce. It seemed like I couldn't have messed up bigger. So pray for them, but when using it as an excuse, don't frustrate yourself, but call them, keep calling them during this time.
Bob and Rosemary, thank you so much for your time. And can I just say to everybody tuning in, I had the privilege of seeing the 2 of them behind the scenes as a child growing up. And what you see here on camera is what you get, and just have such a tremendous amount of respect. I grew up calling them Dr. Barnes and Mrs. Barnes. And so thank you so much for blessing our community, not just tonight, but for so many decades, giving marriages real hope with real objective tools and resources and pointing them to the cross. Dr. Barnes, would you give us we'll go back to Dr. Barnes. Right, would you give us the privilege?
I will. I want to say something to you, though. If our son Roby was not a pastor in this town, we would be at Coral Ridge.
Wow.
And you have seen us sneak in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That means a lot. would you encourage our couples with a word of prayer?
Let me do it. Father, we know you're the answer. You are the answer. Nobody standing up here talking about marriage is the answer. You created marriage. That's why it's so under attack. And you created for us to become complete as couples in marriage. So I pray for the marriages that are really struggling right now. I pray for the marriages that are exhausted right now. I pray for the fear and the finances right now. And I pray that we come out of this in faith, that this becomes, ironically, maybe the greatest Easter ever in our history for each of us as families, as we worship ourselves, and that we come out and as churches, we take this country back for your glory. And it will come out of homes, godly homes. So I pray for protection for homes. Thank you for who you are in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you both. If you enjoy tonight, or you know somebody in your life, family member or friends that need real hope in their marriage right now, this conversation tonight will be available on our website at crpc.org or on our YouTube channel. Why don't you sometime this evening or tomorrow send that link to somebody that needs real hope during this crisis. Also at Coral Ridge, we want to attempt to meet real felt needs with our married couples here in our church and in our community. So we're going to be sending out tomorrow a marriage survey. Be on the lookout for that in your inbox. Would you take a minute and fill out that survey? Give us some good feedback. We want to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our couples and our families here at Coral Ridge. So be on the lookout for that survey, fill it out, and we just send it back to us. May God richly bless you and your family during this season, and please let us know how we can best serve you. Thank you for tuning in tonight for this special midweek event with Bob and Rosemary Barnes. God bless you.